but becoming aware of what bad writing looks like and why bad writing is bad is really important when it comes time for you to do your revisions and to fix it, because we all want to publish stories that we're really proud of. Guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tara East. I'm a writer, blogger, scholar, and author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. In today's video, I want to talk about some of the signs of bad writing. Now, before we start, I want to acknowledge that there is a really weird spot of light, and I have moved around this office so many times and it's just following me, so we're just going to ignore it and get on with shit. Unfortunately, there are many ways in which your writing could be considered bad, but in today's video, I'm going to talk about just a few, and they are sentimental, melodramatic, lazy, and overwriting. So let's begin with the first one, which is sentimental writing. Now, of course, as with all writing rules, there is a place for sentimental writing. When used sparingly, it can be emotionally evocative, but when used in great swaths, well, then it starts to become a bit heavy-handed. Now, the reason why sentimental writing can become problematic is a tendency to make really cruel, painful, oppressive, or pitiful circumstances come across as somewhat whimsical, a little bit fun, or even romanticized. For example, think about the portrayal of the Black domestic workers in The Help. The violence that these women would have suffered in this real circumstance, this thing that actually happened to people, is completely swept aside in that movie, and instead we see these sort of funny jokes like the pie scene, the epic pie scene in that movie. Now, of course, there is nothing sentimental about inspiring compassion within your reader. Writing is a manipulative thing, and it's going to be manipulating its audience in one way or another. But when facts, when history, or real suffering is actually packaged up in a way that seems romanticized, you're masking the real problem, and that in itself is a problem. Now let's talk about melodrama. Now, one of my favorite writing exercises is to actually write something that is melodramatic and that's totally over the top because it's a lot of fun. However, no one wants to read a 600-page fantasy novel that is filled with nothing but melodrama and purple prose. So what is melodrama exactly? Well, basically, it's exaggeration, it's extreme emotions and unbelievable dialogue. Have you ever read something and you think, nobody talks like that? Basically, it's just another form of telling instead of showing. Rather than establishing the mood or emotion of the scene through language, the writer is instead using melodrama as a way to communicate the seriousness of the situation. Now, yes, of course, life can be very dramatic, but melodramatic writing can actually break the believability, and your reader may actually really struggle to take the story seriously. Fortunately, this bad habit can be avoided by instead focusing on a few basic craft elements, which include character development, obstacles, and feelings. Readers need to care about your character enough, or at least the MC, to be invested in what happens to them. And this MC needs to encounter obstacles, and the reader needs some kind of access to that character's internal landscape. Now let's move on to lazy writing. Now, there is a huge difference between simple writing and lazy writing. Simple writing is clear. Lazy writing is boring and unspecific. So here's an example of some simple writing. The room was empty when he entered. Here's an example of lazy writing. He walked into the room. We're all guilty of slipping into this lazy form of prose. Hell, first drafts are usually filled with this kind of lazy writing because we're just trying to get the story out. We're just trying to get it done. Lazy writing relies on overused and unspecific verbs. Now, yes, of course, not every sentence can be a work of art, but it's very easy to swap these unremarkable verbs for things that are a little bit more lively and surprising. Now, please note, You cannot solve a problem with lazy writing by just sprinkling in some adverbs. Do not do that. This will not actually lift the sentence, but there are a few things that you can do which will. So let's take a bland sentence like he walked through the garden. Instead, you could say he skipped through the garden. You could then add some adjectives and nouns or proper nouns to spice things up a little bit further. You could say something like Larry skipped through the luscious garden. Now, yes, of course, this sentence is still very simple, but now it's clear and specific. Now we can see Larry, his actions, and the setting. Whereas before, we didn't know who was walking into the room, we didn't know what the room was like or where it was, and there wasn't really much interesting action happening. Lazy writing can also be a reliance on cliches, whether that be cliche phrases or cliche characters. And it can also be referring to your own writing tics, because we all have words and phrases that we unconsciously use a lot. And it's up to you to go back through your manuscript and to change all of those overused words and phrases, and to search for something that is fresh, invigorating, and surprising for you and for the reader. Now let's move on to overwriting. I have previously created a video called How to Reduce Your Word Count, so I'll link it up in the cards and put it down in the description box below. But one of the main ways that we can overwrite is by including too many adjectives and adverbs. For example, let's take the following sentence. The chipped and worn door flew open with a bang to reveal a stately man with quite the pronounced belly and exceptionally large nose. I don't know why I became British, but we're just gonna go with it. While this sentence is, yes, a little bit fun and it's totally over the top in nature, see melodrama, reading an entire novel in this style would be very unpleasant. Now, an edited version could look something like this. The door opened with a bang to reveal a well-dressed man with a pronounced belly and large nose. This edited version is tighter, being 18 words instead of 24 words, and it's more specific by using words such as well-dressed instead of stately. Now, two other ways you can overwrite is by saying the same thing in two different ways, or by over-explaining things. So let's take the first example. Emily is Erin's sister. Emily is Erin's female sibling. It's exactly the same thing said in two different ways. Now let's look at an example of over-explaining things. The door, which is a large piece of wood that separates two rooms and is secured by hinges, flew open with a bang. I don't really know if we need to unpack that. Now, of course, there are times when bad writing is perfectly okay. Your first draft should be bad, and it probably will be bad. But becoming aware of what bad writing looks like and why bad writing is bad is really important when it comes time for you to do your revisions and to fix it, because we all want to publish stories that we're really proud of. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of your examples of bad writing? What other examples can you think of? And what areas of your own writing do you want to work on? Leave a comment below and tell me all about it. Now, if you want even more writing advice, you can head to taraeast.com. There are a bunch of blogs on the site, so there'll be something there to pique your interest. And while you're there, feel free to join up to my newsletter. What you'll get when you do that is a weekly newsletter every Thursday morning to your inbox. In it, I write a sweet note with links to that week's video and blog, plus a list of resources that I have been enjoying that week, and a sweet little section called 5 Tiny Things. I'll also send you a cheat sheet called 7 Ways to Stay Motivated as a Writer. If you're looking for something to read right now, might I recommend my mystery novel, Every Time He Dies? It's damn good. You can even read the first 3 chapters on my website if you're a little bit afraid of commitment. You can also find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, along with the rest of the world. Thank you so much for watching again, guys. I'll see you next time, and happy writing.